This is our ESS review with Kayla, Lindsay, and myself.
On topic 1 and
Topic 2.1 and 2.4. A system is made up of interdependent parts that work together to create one thing. So you have this idea of synergy that's like the idea of working together.
the effect of synergy is that all environmental systems, ecosystems, and ecological systems follow this synergy effect. An example is a bike. A bike is nothing without all of its parts, and its parts is nothing unless it's created together to combine a bike.
So in ESS, there are a lot of flows and storages. The flows are shown with arrows of inputs and outputs, and this is usually of energy and matter. And there's also storages, which are representative in squares, and this is where energy or matter can be accumulated for different time periods.
Here are some examples of systems. So here's a tree system. So later I will write on the right side the square, which represents the tree biomass, and then it'll have its input arrows, which are carbon dioxide, light, nutrients, water, and tissue, and then its outputs, which are litter to soil, oxygen, water, tissue to other organisms.
Systems also have different scales. This will be seen as an example would be your own self as you're here sitting in the middle of class, and another example would be a bigger example would be you in DAA with all your other classmates, and then the even bigger example is Dubai, which is in the UAE, in Middle East, and then on larger scale, you'll have the whole entire world.
Another example of systems that have many different scales is cells in your body that make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up organ systems, and organ systems make up organisms like humans.
Another example of a system is the Gaia system, which is created by James Lovelock. And he suggested that the Earth is an actual organism, like a living organism, and basically this system revolves around the Earth, and this is an example of a large-scale system. So there's also different types of systems. The first one you can see is an open system, which exchanges matter and energy. This will be exchanged through the boundaries of the system. An example of this are humans, as humans are able to interact with their environments in order to survive.
Another system is a closed system. In a closed system, unlike an open system, only energy is exchanged, no matter, and these systems do not occur naturally. The Earth gets its energy in sun radiation, but it gives out heat, so it's not a perfect example of a closed system.
And then there's an isolated system, which is neither matter nor energy will be exchanged.
The first law of thermodynamics is the law of conservation of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. A good example of this is a food chain. The sun gives light energy that is converted into useful energy by photosynthesis for the grass. Then the snail will consume the grass. Then the bird will consume the snail. The energy is being passed on from one trophic level to the next. Another example is when a human consumes food. The person will eat 5 units of energy as an input. 1 unit is kept for storage. 4 units are released, usually as heat. This is an output. In an isolated system, energy is constant.
And then we have the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy, which is dissipation of energy that is not available to do work, which will eventually ending in chaos. And you can look at this as kindergarten kids. In addition, it measures the disorderliness of a system as it spreads like dye. And an example of this is Earth is in entropy, so in a long time there will be chaos and no more energy, and the chaos in the Earth is losing its heat.
It is also important to keep in mind that energy is work and heat. Equilibrium is the natural state with a tendency to go back to the original state, meaning a balance. An original state would be like a normal forest, and a disturbance would be like a fire forest. An example of this is steady state equilibrium, which usually happens in open systems, which are despite the inputs and outputs of energy and matter, the system remains the same. An example of this would be body temperature, so despite the food we eat or anything, all the inputs we have, our body's temperature mainly stays the same. Static equilibrium is when no inputs or outputs of energy or matter are done, and an example of this would be a chair. This can be seen on the top right of the screen for static equilibrium.
Stable equilibrium is when a system returns to the original state after disturbance. Unlike stable equilibrium, unstable equilibrium is when a system does not return to the original state, however, it forms a new one.
An unstable equilibrium can see on the diagram on the right, which shows how it does not return to the original graph. However, the stable state equilibrium on the bottom left shows how after the disturbance, the original line is kept the same.
There are three characteristics of living systems. The first one is functionality, which is the ability to perform a task or serve a purpose. The second one is sustainability, which is how systems remain intact, productive, and diverse over time. And then there's evolution, which is how species and the rest evolve and change over time.
There are two types of feedback, negative feedback and positive feedback. On the right, you can see negative feedback, which is when an environment returns to things they were in the original, which is in the original state. An example of this is when more grass grows, there is an increase in the bunny population, which then emphasizes or increases the growth of the wolf population as the wolf have more food. However, this decreases the bunny population, which then again decreases the wolf population. This is a continuous cycle. On the other hand, positive feedback is when it gets further away from the original state. And this can be seen as through the melting iceberg. Because of the sun's reflection on the ice, more ice melts, and this just decreases the icebergs. So as more sun is reflected, it always returns with less and less ice, which decreases the iceberg sizes. Predator and prey are basically the relationships from the prey to the predator. This can be seen as the cat is the predator and the mouse is the prey.
All matter and energy move or flow through ecosystems. These are called transfers. Transfers flow through systems and change in location. Examples of transfers are rain and rivers.
Transformations can be defined as an interaction within a system that produces a new product or a change of state. So an example of this is photosynthesis converts sunlight into energy or glucose for the plants. And both transformations and transfers occur at the same time. And an example of this would be water has runoff, which is a transfer, and evaporation, which is a transformation.
Flows and storages can be seen through energy and matter, as energy and matter flow through a system as inputs and outputs, but they can also be kept as storages. The first one is energy, and this can be seen as a flow and a storage, but matter is only seen as a cycling, as it cycles through.
Models are helpful in predictions. They model reality, like weather predictions. Model can be physical, software like Excel, math equations, and data flow. Some advantages of models are that it allows scientists to predict and simplify complex things. The inputs can be changed and the outputs can be investigated. However, there are some disadvantages of models, such as models may not be accurate, like climate models, and different people have different interpretations, and many more.
So now we'll be covering topic 2.1.
Ecology refers to the study of interactions between organisms and their environment. And it's between organisms, environments, biomes, etc., whereas the environment are all the factors that affect an organism.
On the left, you can see abiotic factors, which are non-living physical factors that may influence an organism or ecosystem. Examples of this are the atmosphere, such as the wind or the wind speed, the humidity, precipitation, temperature, and insolation.
Biotic are living biological factors that may influence an organism or ecosystem. And an example of this is interactions such as competition between fishes that battle for plankton.
A trophic level is the position that an organism or species occupies on the food chain. In trophic level 1 are the primary producers, autotrophs, such as the phytoplankton. In trophic level 2 are the primary consumers, herbivores, such as zooplankton. In trophic level 3 are secondary consumers, which are carnivores, such as fish. In the fourth trophic level are tertiary consumers, which are carnivores, which are bigger fish. In trophic level 5 are quaternary consumers, which are also carnivores, such as whales.
Food chains are used to show matter and energy and how they move through an ecosystem. This basically is a linkage of who feeds on who, and it's really simple, such as the diagram on the left.
Food web shows all the possible food chains in an ecosystem, which are complex, and decomposers link back to the producers.
A few of the vocabulary that you should know for this exam are producers and autotrophs, and these basically produce their own food. You should also know consumers and heterovores, and these people eat and consume energy. Decomposers break down organic material. Herbivores eat plants, omnivores eat both, carnivores eat meat, and top-notch carnivores are the last top layer of the food chain. Ecological pyramids are graphical models of the quantitative differences that exist between trophic levels of a single ecosystem. This shows the second law of thermodynamics that and 90% of loss of energy is done by heat. In order to supply one man, many things are needed. The three types of pyramids that need to be known for this exam are pyramid of biomass, productivity, and numbers.
Pyramids of numbers is the number of organisms at each trophic level in a food chain, and they have different shapes. And pyramids of productivity is the flow of energy through each trophic level over time. Typical pyramid form, and sometimes called the pyramid of energy.
Minamata disease is caused by fish with severe mercury damage. This disease is a neurological disorder that is caused by the ingestion of large quantities of fish. This is because of two industries throwing out waste in water. Fish advisories are the amount of fish that a person can consume without getting sick, in other words, being fish smart. Half-life is the amount of time it will take for half of the product to be undetected. However, it never really goes away. Pesticides like DDT don't disappear once it is no longer added to the system. Different systems have different half-lives.
Species are a group of organisms that can interbreed and produce fertile offsprings. This includes only for biotic factors. A population is a group of individuals of the same species living in the same area. This also involves only biotic factors. Community is a group of populations living in interaction with each other in a common habitat. This includes biotic and abiotic factors. An ecosystem is a community of interdependent organisms and the physical environment in which they inhabit. This also involves biotic and abiotic factors. A biome is a collection of ecosystems sharing common climatic conditions, and the biosphere is part of the earth in which organisms inhabit. Competition is when two or more organisms in a community seek the same resources when the supply is limited. Intraspecies competition is competition that happens within a group of species. Interspecies competition is with two different types of species. Nextly, there's predation, is when one species hunts the other and it consumes it in the process. The other one is parasitism, is when one lives on or uses another organism to get nutrients from. And this could be endoparasite or exoparasite. Endoparasite is within the organism, and exoparasite is on the body. And there's mutualism, which is when both species benefit. Bioaccumulation is the accumulation of substances, such as pesticides or other organic compounds in an organism. This results in the organism having a higher concentration of the substances than the concentration of the organism surrounding. For example, too much mercury can lead to diseases such as the Mad Hatter. On the other hand, biomagnification is when the accumulation of substances happens up the food chain by the transfer of residues from the big to the small trophic levels. So basically, as you go up the food trophic levels, The higher organisms in this level need to eat more, meaning that if the lower levels are contaminated, since they will eat twice as much as the lower levels, they will have a higher concentration of these organic compounds. Topic 2.4 explains the biomes. Biomes are a collection of ecosystems that share similar climatic conditions. The three main things that affect a biome are water, insolation, and temperature. These three factors are important because they affect the rate of photosynthesis, as photosynthesis depends on the water, the sun, which is the insolation, and as well as the temperature.
For tropical rainforests, the average temperature is 26 degrees and the range is between 26 to 28 degrees Celsius. For precipitation, the average is 250 centimeters per year, and the range is between 200 and 500 centimeters per year. And tropical rainforests have high insolation, and its latitudes are between 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south. And it has no major limiting factors because of the high insolation, the temperature, and rain. And its relative productivity is 2200. And then we have deserts, and its average temperature is 45 degrees, and it has a range between 40 to 49 degrees Celsius. There is little precipitation, so the average and range of precipitation per year is less than 25 centimeters, and it has high insolation. And the latitude is 40 degrees north and 40 degrees south. And its main limiting factors is rain, as it's extremely little, and the extreme temperatures and insolation can also limit productivity. And in addition, it also slows decomposition. Its relative productivity is 90.
The tundra has an average temperature of negative 28 degrees Celsius and the range of negative 50 degrees Celsius to 12 degrees Celsius. The average precipitation centimeters per year is less than 25 centimeters. It has a low insolation. Its latitudes are 60 degrees to 70 degrees north. Some limiting factors of the tundra are the low temperatures, low rainfall, low insolation, which produces a low diversity and productivity. The tundra has a relative productivity of 140.
And then we have temperate rainforest, which has an average temperature of 10 degrees and a range between negative 30 to 30 degrees Celsius. And for precipitation, there's just a range which is between 600 to 2,500 centimeters per year. And it has high insolation, and the latitude is between 40 to 60 degrees north and south. And it's the second most diverse biome after rainforest, meaning that all its factors are average, meaning no extreme factors that limit the net primary productivity. And its relative productivity is 1200.
Lastly, there is a precipitation to evaporation ratio, where greater than 1 means that it precipitates more than it evaporates, equal to 1 means that they are equal, and less than 1 means it evaporates more than it rains.